So my presentation is going to be on honesty. I'm Ben Jameson. I teach and coach at the high school level. So I'm going to kind of talk about how that applies to me and my athletes and students within my areas. So for the introduction, I kind of have two verses. First one is Ephesians 4:25. Therefore, each of you must put off falsehood and speak truthfully to your neighbor, for we are all members of one body. And then the second verse I have is Proverbs 12:22. The Lord detests lying lips, but he delights in people who are trustworthy. So very clear where the Bible stands on honesty. I don't think anybody questioned that, but it is very clear, and it even says the Lord detests lying lips while he delights in people who are trustworthy. So I think those are some very clear and important things that obviously the Lord is very clear on his stance on honesty. So kind of a continuation on that. I think it's important for any business, any organization to be working at maximum capacity. You need people who are honest to each other. You need people who are honest within the organization. For me, obviously, that's within a classroom or a sports team, and I think I've seen on teams the importance and the positive impact that can be had for those teams that have an honesty. Another thing I think lying is one of the biggest problems there is in high school, and I think ultimately a lot of the problems we have with our athletes and with our students come back to lying because there's a lack of truth, because they're not honest with each other, with us as their teacher or coach, or their parents or whatever it is. But I think speaking truth can actually solve a lot of the problems that we kind of have. So I kind of mentioned it, but there's a level of trust, respect. Excuses can become a problem when it comes to lying. I think excuses a lot of times are essentially lies of I'm using something that's not necessarily the full truth to reason for why I did something. So underachievement. I think as a coach, if I'm not honest with players, there's potential for major underachievement because they're not going to maximize what they do if I can't be honest with them about whatever it is. So. Definition, Merriam-Webster defines it as fairness and straightforwardness of conduct, adherence to the facts. While our book, Practical Ethics in Sports Management, defined it as honesty as the condition or capacity of being truthful or trustworthy in dealing with others, dealing fairly and uprightly in speech and action. I thought that second one was really good with talking about dealing uprightly. And when we talk about, especially as a Christian, to deal with someone or an athlete uprightly and fairly doesn't necessarily mean everybody just gets this easy. I can still hold them to a standard, but I'm doing it in a way that's fair and upright, and there's honesty in that. So my definition, like I said, being straightforward as a coach, as a teacher, telling the students, telling my athletes the honest truth because it's ultimately better for them, even if it's a hard conversation to have. Telling the truth, like I said, being fair and dealing with people, and that's kind of, I mentioned on the other one, and that's kind of what made me think of that, but I think the way you deal with your athletes, and if you can do it in a fair way, is very, very important. And I think your athletes will see that and can gain some trust from that. So, example, player skips a workout and decides to say that he was at a camp or a vacation rather than being honest and telling the team that he skipped the workout. Here's the threat. A teammate finds out that that's not true. That's going to hurt the trust of the team. That's going to ultimately hurt their ability to trust him when you're lining up to this guy and you know that he lied to the coaches, he lied to the team, and he did what was best for him or what he felt was best for him as opposed to what was best for the team. So next one, example as a coach. You have a player who's losing a starting spot, and I kind of already alluded to this. It is important to, rather than they lose their starting spot, you announce it before the game, this guy's starting, and he has no idea what's going on. If you sit down with him and say, here's the deal. This guy's done this, or you need to get better at this, to this, and be honest with them and truthfully have that hard conversation. I think that can have a really, really positive and be a very, very important impact. So, application athletics, following the rules set by CIF. There's a lot of stuff that goes on within other schools, within athletics these days, with transfers, with scholarships, with whatever it is, but ultimately you're responsible for yourself. And I think for myself, following the rules that are set by CIF is part of being trustworthy, is part of telling the truth. Being honest with a player about playing time. I said that. Being honest with teammates, as a player with teammates, coaches. So being honest in, you know what, coach, I slept through my alarm. That's my bad. I'll do what I need to do to make it up to the team, but that was my fault. I apologize. that can go such a long way and keeps you from getting to the point where you start making excuses, start lying, start digging yourself a deeper ditch that you ultimately can hurt you in the long run. So, facing the hard talks, which it's kind of a common theme, but I think for me as a coach, it's one of the things I struggle with, but I know is important, is having those hard talks to give honest feedback to kids that maybe isn't what they want to hear in the moment, but in the long run, it's going to be the best thing for them. It's just in the moment they don't want to hear it, but in the long run, like I said, it's so vastly important, and that's where so much growth can happen. If you're not telling an athlete the truth, what they're actually going to do isn't necessarily going to lead to the same performance that it could if you were kind of telling them what they wanted to hear. So small lying can have a big impact. It's so easy for us to say, oh no, it's fine because this is just a small lie, or this is just a little deal. That can have a huge impact. What you do when no one's watching, that's very important. And I'll have a John Wooden quote coming up, who I think is probably, in my opinion, the coach that I have more respect for than any coach that's ever coached. And he talks about that. He talks about, what do you do when no one's looking? Who are you when no one's looking? It's easier to tell ourselves it's just a small lie and it won't hurt anyone. There's a video, and I've attached a link. We're not going to watch it because it's a little bit longer, but it's this study, and they have these people take these tests, and it's the amount of questions they finish is how much money they're going to get paid for doing this study. They don't know that the study is actually about honesty. What they do is have them put the papers in a shredder, and then they just report on their own. Here's how many I got. Here's how many I got to. They give them the money that they go and they leave. What they then do is the shredder was actually a church shredder, and they're able to go and find the answers. Here's what was interesting is there was a very small number that did a big, that totally exaggerated the number and got way more money than what they should have. What happened was there was a large number of people who just fudged the number by a little bit, and that cost them significantly more money of a lot of people just kind of telling a small lie as opposed to the very big lie, which I thought was actually very interesting. They talk about how those little lies can actually end up having a bigger impact because of the number of people that'll do it. So here's the quote that I talked about. The true test of a man's character is what he does when no one's watching. Unbelievable. It's so true, and it's something that I think about constantly as a coach and a teacher. So positive impact of honesty. It builds trust. We talked about that. Helps someone see the truth and grow. Helps keep yourself accountable. If you are a trustworthy person and can honestly have that trust where people know that you're trustworthy, it's going to help keep you accountable because you know that you have to live up to this standard and this is what's expected of you. So kind of in conclusion, what I'll say, we're called to be truthful. Living a life of truth will positively affect other aspects of your life. If you can be truthful in these things, it's going to grow you in other areas of your life. One of the reasons I picked honesty when I had the choice is because I thought that was something that was applicable, that if you set that as your base and you're truthful and honest in your dealings, a lot of the other characters and qualities are going to come along the way because of that honesty. So, last verse I kind of put in here that I thought is really good is, all that is secret will eventually be brought into the open. Everything that is concealed will be brought to light and made known to all. Luke 8:17, and that's kind of God's telling us, whatever you do, even if you do it in secret, even if it eventually comes out and it's eventually come to light, and there could be so much more growth within telling the truth and doing it the right way the first time, rather than trying to kind of scheme and do things your own way. So that is it. The citations are on the next slide, which will be in there when I turn it in. But I hope that you enjoyed that. I think honesty is something that is so applicable to high school students and me as a coach. I see it within our staff, and I see it within our players. And when honesty is there, true, authentic honesty, I think it's huge and can change a program, which is why I chose it. And obviously, biblically speaking, it's very clear where the Bible stands on that too.